Hey there guys, Mr. Chicken Movies here and welcome back to another video. And with 2018 over for a while now, I thought it would be time to make a top 10 of 2018 video. Now, just to be clear, this list only consists of films that I saw in the calendar year 2018 that released in the year 2018. And the reason this video hasn't come out sooner is because I've actually been trying to watch a lot of movies. In this case, I have seen 75 movies, some of which you'll be seeing in this video and some of which you'll be seeing in my next video, Top 10 Worst of 2018. And just to be clear, this is all my opinion, obviously, it's all subjective, you don't have to look too far into it, don't worry, and just know that this isn't a ranking of my enjoyment of these movies. I'm ranking these in terms of the artistic merits, and I'm judging them as how they're composed as films as opposed to my enjoyment, because if I ranked it in terms of my enjoyment, then the list would look something like Infinity War, Infinity War, Infinity War, Mission Impossible, and Truth or Dare. And with that said, before we get into the actual top 10, I thought I'd give a few honourable mentions of films that I really liked but didn't like enough, and they are Sicario Day of the Soldado, Green Book, Blind Spotting, Annihilation, and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Some of them hurt me that they're not on this list, but hey. And now on to number 10. This might come as a surprise to many of you considering I never reviewed it, and it's a blockbuster and they don't typically show up on these sort of lists. However, I loved Infinity War all the way through. There are a couple of exceptions there, but by far it was the best event film of the year and it provided the best spectacle of the year. With that, I think a lot of it is down to the brilliant direction from the Russo bros, who managed to perfectly balance all these storylines and characters from literally a decade's worth of films, especially with Thanos, the main villain of this film, and essentially the whole plot of it lies on his shoulders. So the fact that they handled that well, I think, is an achievement in itself. In addition to that, I think in terms of with Thanos, they did an amazing job with everything to do with him. Every time he was on screen, I was electrified. Every time I saw him, I was intimidated, but I completely understood where he was coming from. I could see his twisted logic, and I legitimately feared for the Avengers when he was ever facing off against them. And I think it goes without saying that Josh Brolin's mocap work is amazing in this film. Likewise, I was surprised with how good some of the performances were, in particular Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr. and Zoe Saldana. The cinematography of the film was so colourful and it was way better than it should have been. In fact, I think that the colour in this film is just amazing. Now obviously the one major flaw that this has is this technically isn't a film. Technically it's chapter 19 of a massive series of films. And for that reason, a lot of characters don't go through any arcs, but even then, they still manage to throw in some really compelling storylines and characters. If you're with it, this is the make or break point with Marvel, and for me, it absolutely made it, and made one hell of a viewing experience at the cinema. The film all the way through was exciting, the music was great, the direction was great, all the characters had amazing moments, and ultimately, this just left me so engaged and excited for Avengers Endgame. So yeah, that's why it's at number 10. Not the best film ever made, but by far the best experience ever made. First Man is a film that not many people were particularly talking about when it came to their top 10 lists, and I think that it in a way is underrated. Partially because I think a lot of the criticisms that people had were absolutely the director's intention. This film is made to look like it was made in the 1960s, and I think that that was a really interesting technique for them to implement, and it never straight up hindered any of the film. I still think that regardless of various colour correction choices and framing choices and editing choices, the film still looked really great, and that's partially due to Damien Chazelle, and I also think that the cinematography once again was excellent. I think this film had a lot of heart, as well as giving us a lot of serious moments with a lot of deep intention. This film is really heartfelt and really enjoyable to watch. Maybe not all the way through, I think there are some minor pacing issues, but again, if you're with it and you're interested, then this is definitely worth watching. I think a lot of the visual effects and practical effects are amazing in this film. I think the editing is excellent. I think all the sound editing is great. I think Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy are both amazing in this film. And ultimately, it's just really heartfelt. It's a nice sort of story. The soundtrack was quite unique, actually. And this is definitely something I wasn't particularly expecting from Damien Chazelle. However, I think it was nonetheless a really, really good film. If I had one problem with it, I'd say is there were a couple of scenes that sort of felt disconnected from the rest of the film. However, ultimately it did a great job of making you feel for Neil Armstrong and making you completely understand what Neil Armstrong would go through in his life and the sort of ideas that he had. And overall, I loved First Man. I think it's a great film with great direction, strong performances, and some really nice stylistic choices. They're not for everyone, but I think it did a great job there. And for that reason, First Man is at number 9. Another surprising choice, I know, even I was surprised to like it as much as I did. I think Bradley Cooper is the main reason this film worked so much. I think this is a pretty great directorial debut. I think he did a really good job with the visual presentation of this film. I think the writing of the film is actually really good, and I think, God, there are some excellent performances in here. Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, and Sam Elliott are all brilliant in this, and in some cases I think it may even define their careers. More so Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga than Sam Elliott, however, they're still all great. I think the music in this film is phenomenal, and I'd be shocked if Shallow doesn't win for Best Original Song at the Oscars this year. Overall, this film just felt really heartfelt and really genuine. Obviously, you could say that it isn't the deepest of films, but it definitely went places that other movies wouldn't dare go. It has some real heart, a real narrative stability to it, and some really great character development to it. Ultimately, I completely understood Lady Gaga's character and was really invested in it. I really liked the way that they edited some of the sequences together. I think the use of sound in the film is really good. I think a lot of the cinematography in this film is really good. Overall, this is just a really enjoyable film, and one that is sure to stick with us for a while, judging by how it seems to be doing this award season. I think this film's great, I think it has amazing performances in it, and overall it's just a really heartfelt story that feels genuine and touching. A Star is Born is at number 8. I legitimately couldn't wait to talk about this movie. When I left the cinema, I was gushing about it. I think that this is one of my favourite animated films of all time. Maybe not one of the best animated films of all time, but certainly one of my favourites. What this film does in terms of its animation style and its visual presentation is just unreal. The amount of effort that went into the animation is just stupendous. And I think this is one of the best looking animated films, period. In particular, I think they did a really good job in terms of the colour, in terms of the frame rate, in terms of the ultimate design of a number of these elements that they tried so hard to make it look like a comic book. And it definitely pays off. This is one of the most comic book movies ever made. The movements are all sharp and quick, yet filled with so much emotion and genuine care for the genre. There are a ton of deep cut references that I think are really well done. But with that, this film comes with an awful lot of heart. I think that the character of Miles Morales is really well done in the film, and I really enjoyed his presence. Likewise, I really liked Peter Parker in this movie, I really liked Spider-Gwen in this movie, I really liked Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Noir, I really liked Aunt May in this movie of all characters. Even all of the supporting characters were really cool in this. The only character who I think could have been given more screen time is the Kingpin. However, considering what they were doing, they still gave him a decent amount of development. And sure, you could say that the plot is dumb, but may I remind you that this is based off a Marvel comic. I'm not exactly expecting a huge amount from this, but I think all the animation styles and all the care that goes into this is just fantastic. It's phenomenal. It's above and beyond. The story itself feels just really genuine and really creative. There's so much heart to this. The music is particularly great, the action scenes are very well shot, there's some great voice acting in this film. I never cease to get bored throughout it. I think that some of the jokes are hilarious in it, and I think that the structure of the film is just so unique. This is the sort of animated film that makes me hate other animated films even more, if that makes sense. This is one that takes the art form of animation and fully embraces it in a way that I don't think I have ever seen it before. That is why Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, even though it's not the best film of 2018 or the best animated film ever, will always be one of my favourites, and I think it is an absolute joy to watch. First Reformed is a weird film. When I first watched it, I thought it was very peculiar, but as time's gone on, I've turned around on it absolutely. This is a character study on a priest who essentially starts out as a priest, and well, I'm not going to spoil what direction this film goes in, but one thing I can say is this film is very, very out there. I think Ethan Hawke gives one of the best performances I have ever seen from him. He was absolutely snubbed of an Oscar. I think the direction is really unique in this film. I think the framing is excellent. I think some of the color correcting choices are really interesting. I think that the 4:3 ratio, whilst at first it's distracting, eventually you do get over it, and I found some of these scenes of just characters talking about some very nothing things to still be visually interesting with some great dialogue. Thank God this was Oscar nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I think that Amanda Seyfried does a great job. I think that all the performances all around are great. I think that the writing is superb, the dialogue's excellent, the story is excellent, the pacing is excellent. I think there's some really bold visual choices that the film takes, and it has a definite punch to it. This is a character study that goes all the way and is really interesting to watch. I wouldn't say this film is for everyone, but it is deep and it is gratifying when you get to the end of it. And that is why First Reformed is at number 6. Mission Impossible Fallout is, in my opinion, one of the best action films of the decade. I think this film is phenomenal for what it was trying to do. Now, obviously it's an action film, so of course it's not going to have the most deep and well-presented screenplay, but with all that said, it is still pretty damn good in terms of what it can do. I think that Tom Cruise gives his best performance in the series. I think that all the side characters are really good in this film. I think that humour and tone is very well balanced throughout the film, and I think that both villains are excellent, but mostly, you know what I'm going to say, all the action scenes are just incredible to watch. I was gritting my teeth throughout all of the action scenes. And I think a lot of the stuff that helps with that is that the director, Christopher McQuarrie, did an incredible job with coordinating these action scenes and the characters within it. I think the screenplay, even though it's not perfect, I think it is just phenomenal. I think that a lot of the set pieces are really exciting. I think the stunt work, I mean, what can I say? Tom Cruise is more committed than any other actor in Hollywood right now. The editing is great, the score is phenomenal, I think a lot of the production design is great, I think a lot of the character beats are great. I think that ultimately this film just succeeds as the perfect action film of the decade. It's one of the quintessential action films, and I definitely recommend this to all people. And of course, I think that this film is just amazing. I was constantly on the edge of my seat throughout the film, and I enjoyed every single second of it. Obviously, it's not going to be high art, but in terms of entertainment value, it could be no better. The action set pieces are incredible, a lot of the performances are great, I think the screenplay is surprisingly good, and the cinematography is way better than it has any right to be. And ultimately, this just cemented Mission Impossible as one of my favourite franchises out there right now. It's willing to do things with film that not many people would be willing to do. And for that reason, Mission Impossible Fallout absolutely deserves to round up the top 5. I think this film is incredible. Overall, I personally think that 2018 was a pretty rubbish year for horror films. We got Halloween, we got The Nun, we got Unfriended the Dark Web, and a couple that I'm going to mention in my next video, Top 10 Worst of 2018. And then Hereditary came and saved this year in terms of horror films, because I think Hereditary is brilliant. This film was terrifying, it was unsettling, and it was creepy almost the whole way through. Some of the scares in this movie are just shocking, they're terrifying, and they're brilliantly done. I think that Toni Collette gives the best performance of her career. I think that she was absolutely snubbed from the Oscars this year, and in general she didn't get any award show recognition, which really sucks. Some of the actors in this, who I thought were initially going to be pretty bad, were amazing in this. This film was shocking, this film was intense, this film was creepy, and this film never bored me. The editing and the direction led for a lot of great suspense in it. There's a supernatural element that is just really, really creepy throughout it. I think that the music is pretty damn good, I think that the pacing is great, I think that a lot of the scares are really satisfying, and the end of it is just shocking as hell. I think Hereditary is one horror film that probably won't have legs that will make it last that long, but I absolutely think it deserves to. It's a different kind of horror, and it's one that absolutely succeeds with what it does. And for that reason, Hereditary is at number 4, and I think it is amazing. I don't think I've ever before included a foreign language film in one of these lists, but I think Roma absolutely deserves to be mentioned here. Roma is directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who's done some amazing Hollywood films, in particular Children of Men, Gravity, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and this is definitely a passion project of his. And what he does in this film, in terms of its framing, in terms of its lighting, in terms of its cinematography, for a film that is in black and white, is just incredible. I think that the screenplay is excellent. I think that all the performances all the way round are really, really good. And that's saying something, because normally you can't really tell with some of these performances whenever they're in another language, but all the performances just felt so genuine and rich. I think the direction is near perfect in this film. There isn't a single shot that didn't look gorgeous to me in the film. I think that the writing, like I said, it never bored me. It never made me question anything. The film, yet even still, it felt so unique. It felt like it had a voice of its own. It felt like it had a vision and it stuck to it. I think that the opening scene is really creative, and I think a lot of the camera work is just so impressive to look at. I think this is a film that absolutely deserves the award recognition it's getting. And overall, I just think that Roma is a brilliant film in almost every aspect. The editing's great, the music's great, the lighting's great, the camera work's great, the dialogue's great. And yeah, everything is great in Roma, and that is why it is at number 3. To put it simply, I love it whenever Hollywood goes metaphysical on itself, and Under the Silverlake absolutely does that. It's really, really inventive with the plot it's portraying here, and gives it such an interesting vibe and feel to it. I think that the editing is top notch here. I think that the direction is really good. I think that the use of colour is amazing. I think the lighting is brilliant. I think that Andrew Garfield gives an amazing performance in this film. This film has such a quirky character. A lot of the characters are really odd yet fascinating. That's ultimately how I can describe this film. Odd yet fascinating. The structure of this film is engaging and enthralling, and I was really interested throughout the whole thing. And when you get to the main reveals of the film, it mixes them with both comedy and heart. I think that this film serves superbly as a mystery, as a think piece, as even just a comment on how life is nowadays. I think that what this film attempts to do is really fascinating. And I think that it is definitely helped by some amazing direction, some amazing writing, some amazing cinematography, and ultimately I was just enthralled throughout the film. The film is such a tour de force in terms of its visual style, in terms of its cinematography and colour and framing choices. This film just looks phenomenal. And with such a good screenplay to go with it, with such great performances, with such great framing, I can't resist but put this film at number 2. It is that good. And that is Under the Silverlake. Not for everyone, but still brilliant. And so, the number 1 best film of 2018 is No, my actual favourite film of 2018 is The Favourite. The Favourite is, again, a film that isn't for everyone, but The Favourite, for me, is everything I could have hoped for. This film is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who also directed The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I think that his tone is perfect in this film. I think that he gives some truly amazing direction, some truly amazing cinematography using natural light. I think the production design of the film is phenomenal. I think that a lot of the sets and the locations are perfect in this film, and of course I think that the acting is top notch. I think Olivia Colman is incredible, I think that Rachel Weisz is excellent, I think that Emma Stone is excellent, I think the music is surprisingly good, and the use of classical music actually definitely suits this film in a really good way. This film has such a unique tone that even with scenes of two people talking about boring things can still remain interesting and entertaining. I love how throughout the film you're constantly switching allegiances to different characters. I love how it tries to change your perception of these different characters. Most will give you a clear protagonist and a clear antagonist, however this one sort of lets you figure it out for yourself. I love the ending of the film, I think it's brilliant, I think a lot of the character development is brilliant, the editing is superb, the supporting actors are all really good, the scene transitions are great, a lot of the lighting and cinematography is superb, the way the camera moves is amazing, and of course the writing is incredibly witty, yet surprisingly serious. I took every moment of this film seriously, and it has such a unique voice for itself. I think that in terms of dialogue this film is brilliant, I think it has a ton of great moments in it, I think it's hilarious, and I think it can still be taken very seriously in terms of what it wants to do. This film is an absolute tour de force in terms of filmmaking. I think that all the visuals of this film are amazing, I think that the acting is incredible, I think that all the technical aspects of this film are near perfect. As a whole, I think The Favourite is a near perfect film. It's an immensely satisfying character study that is a period piece that, even though it's not historically accurate, it has such a unique vision and quirky voice of its own. There was so much style and character poured into this film in a way that feels very natural. And for that reason, The Favourite is my favourite movie of 2018. I think it is the best, and it's probably not everyone's favourite, but for me, I think this film is superb. And that's it guys, that is my top 10 best movies of 2018. Be sure to check out my top 10 worst movies of 2018 video when it comes out, and also let me know in the comments, do you agree, do you disagree, what are your personal lists, do you want me to die in a fire, probably. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, worst movies of 2018 will be coming soon, and also don't forget to check out my Letterboxd account, where as I see more 2018 movies I will add them to the list. And overall, I just hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you later. Bye bye.